I am a First Nations person on my traditional territory. This is my land, and nobody is going to stop me from saying anything. I will exercise my human right as a person. I don't need Greenpeace. I don't need David Suzuki. I can speak for myself, and I am.
Lawrence Paul's First Nations name means man of masks, and the coastal Salish Okanagan artist is certainly that. His very political and very surrealist art is in private collections around the world and the National Gallery of Canada. And as an activist in the Idle No More movement, he doesn't confine his politics to canvas. We met him in his studio in Vancouver.
Lawrence, I wanted to start by asking a little bit about your childhood, because you had a pretty politically active childhood, didn't you?
Yeah, I was raised out of Kamloops. My father was a teacher at the residential school, but later on he was working with the Indian Brotherhood. My mother was working with the Native Homemakers Association. So they're both politically involved in British Columbia.
Yeah. And so you were getting to traipse all over the place to political rallies and that sort of stuff?
I remember one time when we were out catching fish. Game warden walks up to us, and I was with my brother, and game warden says, "It's illegal for you Indians to be catching fish." And I said, "You can give me a ticket, you can arrest me, but at 6 o'clock when the news comes on and you're arresting a 14-year-old child trying to food fish, you're going to look pretty silly." I said, "I'm going to keep catching fish, and you will have to physically stop me." And he just walked away. So it's, I've learned what it means.
You learned a few things when you were a kid.
Of course.
Yeah.
Exercise your rights, lose it or lose it. Yeah.
Now, was politics something that you ever considered actually getting into?
I thought of it, but I thought that the communications of this country was one-sided. The news was the newspaper, the newsprint. We were a target. Every morning you'd wake up and you'd see this Indian target on your television. We knew what the game was about in this country. So communications was a big problem, I found. But I went to residential school, and then I went to public school. So it was two different experiences when they changed the law. So they had to change the law for natives to go to public school.
Yeah.
And
what age were you when you made that shift from residential to public school?
I was grade 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're still pretty young.
Pretty young. Yeah.
And it was a dramatic difference, I'm assuming.
Well, the difference is that in residential school they have graveyards. At public school they didn't. So, I asked my dad about that.
Yeah.
And he said, "No, they're not going to kill you at public school." Sure enough thought it was, though.
So when did art start for you? When did you start taking an interest in art?
I was at the residential school, and the grade 12 boys, I'd sit at the wood shop, and I was carving at 6. I was making art when I was 6.
And that was something that came easily to you, I guess?
Piece of cake.
Really, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it went from, carving is one thing, and certainly there's a tradition of it, but that's not what you stuck with.
No, I went into my training was public school, so it was a different experience. And living off reserve, so you're not involved with a community where you're sitting at home with the community carving on a reservation.
Right.
I'm off reserve. I'm a generation that's off reserve. First generation off reserve Indians.
Yeah. So how did that affect your art?
I think it's where real life is around you. Your world is where you are. So as traveling and seeing things, and that made it more real.
Yeah.
So that's different from being on a reservation.
Yeah. You went to Emily Carr.
Yes.
How much of an influential period of time was that in your artistic life?
I think I learned how to communicate. I was always interested in the world, painting. There were so many things to deal with. So I thought that it was a way to examine the world. I think that was.
Yeah. Were there other artists around you, or more older artists, more established artists that were influential to the area that you ended up going into?
No.
No?
No, I was the first to go where no Indian's gone before, kind of thing.
Well, that's true. I'm curious about that.
There was
though.
five.
Yeah.
There was five of us at the time that I went. There was a few others that did go before me, natives individually. So there was, over the years, natives have trickled through that institution. I just seemed to be in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing and saying whatever I please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the element of surrealism in your work, because you have talked in the past about how the surrealists themselves were influenced by a lot of the art that came out of the West Coast Aboriginal culture at the time.
They came here and looked at surrealism to write their manifestos. So surrealism as a native person, I mean, that's always going to be there. I mean, even Picasso. I think culturally, if you look at the history of collecting works of primitivism, it's a duality. It's like saying the modernality of primitivism, how it affected the world, how we affected the world. A sand person in the Navajos painting with sand with his hand. Jasper Jones sits down and watches it and experiences a native person doing something, and then turns around and makes his great discovery. It was only expropriating. Culturally, it was what they naturally do, is learn from another culture and translate it into their own culture. That's what he was doing. I understand what he did. Some people would say that he was expropriating, but I would say that he was learning from the First Nations.
Do you feel when you started using the surrealism that you currently use in your works, combined with First Nations images, that in a sense you were taking back something that had been taken away?
It was never really taken away.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's, I'm looking at it and creating a style that, as people could imagine how my mind would think. To visually experience a landscape, when I say this is Indian land, and your rent is due, you're on my land. You know, I'm making a statement about if it's an annexation, if we are annexed into Confederation, and how one steals land. So if you put a flag on it, if you put a Canadian country to it, then your land claim that this country claims is a false position, because this is a non-treaty province. We've never settled land claims. I am non-treaty. Let's make this really clear. I am one of the landlords. I'm the caretaker of this land. It is my responsibility as a First Nations person to look after my homeland. This is my homeland. This is my motherland. This is not provincialism. This is not Canada. You know, that's the difference in terms of how I feel. You know, you can force a Canadian citizenship on me, but doesn't mean that I have to welcome it.
That makes me want to ask you about the performance piece that you did, shooting the Indian Act,
Right.
which you did a few years ago. Talk a little bit about that, because that, for people who don't know it, that title, Shooting the Indian Act, is exactly what it was. You shot the Indian Act.
Well, I went over to London. Why London? I mean, we have to go back in history. The Royal Proclamation, the British North American Act, the Constitution, the new Constitution. You know, so when we're talking about totalitarian, capitalistic, imperialistic pigs, I'm talking about the Queen, you know, the cash cow. This cash cow and its imperial regime of the world. And, you know, I really, you know, I think she can bite a cyanide pill as far as I'm concerned about Aboriginal rights in this country and that family and what they've done to Aboriginal people. You know, she can bite really hard. And I think that that's what my feelings about the Indian Act is, that it was such a racist white supremacy act of Canada. They have the wrong title for it. Canada has to fess up to its white supremacy. You don't need the Ku Klux Klan and United States flag and waving their shit all over the place. I mean, you guys have Harper. You guys have, you know, John Chrétien, the White Paper Policy in 1969. Abolish all reservations, assimilate all Indians. Harper probably has John Chrétien on his speed dial. We got to take care of those Indians. The Indian problem. You know, I know what the Indian problem is. You know, and I am a living example of that problem. Is that what residential school did, public school finished off in terms of its genocide. I'm speaking here to you in your language, because my language is lost. I paid a big price for that. When I sit in a longhouse and listen to an Indian speaking his language to me, and I don't understand it, when the history of ramming French down an Indian's throat and ramming English down someone's throat, when you talk about the language wars that have gone on in this country, Natives are very clear about what it means. So why I shot the Indian Act, there is a lot of reasons. At the time, we were not included in the Bill of Human Rights when I shot the Indian Act. It superseded the Bill of Human Rights. It was a segregation act. It's nothing more than an apartheid. This is an apartheid system.
So when you were shooting it, you essentially were changing it, right?
I was shooting. I was so pissed off at it, I about had enough of it, and I shot him at the Brisley Rifle Range, and I shot them in a private estate. I used a rifle, a World War II sniper rifle, because it was the same as what I use as I hunt, like a 30-06.
All right.
So they gave me a British sniper rifle, and we put it up, and they call it the butt, where at the end the targets will go up and down, and they brought it up, and I'd shoot them at 1,000 yards, and I was hitting the target just like I was hunting. And
you refer to it as a really good book review.
I mean, it was. I think that you know, you have to tell this country sometimes what you really. It's not that I would take a position that says I hate you all. It's like I just don't like your legislation. Mm-hmm. I don't have to hate you. You just have to change your legislation of how you treat human beings. And I thought this was one of the most disgusting. I would never wish the Indian Act. I wouldn't even wish it upon the Palestinians. That's the fear that I have, is that the Department of Indian Affairs will go over there and start preaching their philosophy over to the Palestinians, and we'll see what happens to them when they finish head shooting those people. It gets really dangerous on this world.
Let me ask you about. Let me ask you about some personal stuff as an artist when you were starting out. Just some biographical stuff, because I'm curious as to what it was like for you. How did you get recognized? How difficult was it, or was it difficult for you to get recognized with your work when you were first starting out?
Well, I did a painting titled Outstanding Business. I did a painting titled Severing Aboriginal Birthrights Extinguishment Policy. Toured an international show out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. And natives were not always aware what it means that you have to extinguish your rights as a person forever to all Canadian people so that we can have equality. Does that make sense? That point of no return, that even after you've signed these agreements, any children after that point will no longer be Indian. They'll just be a Canadian citizen. So that's what it means when you're under occupation. These are the ultimatums. They talk about land claims and treaties and stuff. The negotiation process where the chiefs have accepted $500 million. This money is just chump change. This province is worth billions. And they're talking millions to Indians.
Mm-hmm. What was the title of the painting, the Nisga'a Deal painting that you did? What was the full title of it?
That was Nisga'a Deal, Chump Change, The Last Stand.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, before we started doing this, and you and I were chatting, and I said, I get the impression that sometimes you have as much fun actually making up titles for your paintings as you do with the paintings.
Well, it was chump change. Yeah. And I don't think that... I think that our chiefs are selling us out, and I have no respect for chiefs that are doing that in the name of Aboriginal people. I think that we should be negotiating traditional territories as a municipal. This is a segregated country, and I think we have to change into a municipal. I don't mind taking down the reservations, but
you want something to replace them.
I don't think they need to be. I think we just have to take them down and just say this is all their traditional territory, okay, and manage it as a municipal jurisdictional territories. Now, there's no reason why natives should be building off reserve wherever they want, because we never signed any treaties. We're just non-treaty. I don't know. These Indians are just crazy. Why they listen to the Indian Act still? There's no reason to keep this colonial construct of staying. This is our land.
Tell me about Idle No More. Tell me what you think about how it's doing, because I think that I've been told by some First Nations people that it was that it has sparked a younger generation into an awareness that they may not have had before, or at least into an action that they may not have had before. But some of the criticism of it is that it was so wildly all over the place at the beginning that it wasn't as efficacious as it could have been. It didn't have the impact that it could have had it had been focused more. Do you think that's true?
Well, I watched the television, and I watched our national chief standing outside protesting like a commoner when the House went into session. So the only time that they meet is that we have to force this government to meet. This is an apartheid system. They don't meet, they're only forced. We have to embarrass this government to the point of saying, yeah, let's just embarrass this government as much as we can globally. This is how they treat Aboriginal people.
But that's been tried before and it hasn't worked. I mean, Canada hasn't signed the UN treaty. There are all kinds of things that various Canadian governments have not done, and there have been efforts in the past to embarrass them. They seem to be embarrassment-proof.
Well, it's an apartheid system. It's not. I mean, when you make Bill C-45 and different regulations to eliminate Aboriginal rights, Why don't they just let us go? If they really don't like Indians in this country, why don't you just let me leave the Confederation if you have that much hate towards Aboriginal people? I mean, why should I feel unwelcome on my own land by all these immigrants when they turned around and they wouldn't give me my Bill of Human Rights up until for the last 2 years of my life? So I know the sentiments about Canadians and what they think of Aboriginal people. Their sentiments is that I don't give a shit. Because when you get nothing for nothing, it begets nothing. You can make a tar sands, you can make it so toxic. You got it for nothing, so I can just screw it up.
So tell me about the role of your art in all of this then. I mean, your art is very political.
Yeah.
How do you see it fitting into the scenarios that you're talking about now? What are you attempting to do with your art?
If BP happens, if Chernobyl happens, and off the coast from stuff coming over from Japan, and I'm sitting on my reservation, you know, these are people that have armies, police states, governments. Who are you as a person to say anything? Are you allowed to say anything on this planet about these people and what they do? Because we have a very big equipment, nice tanks, nice semi-automatic machine guns. You want to fuck with all those people on this planet? That's what you're fucking with when you're talking about the environments and their countries. But you have to take the risk and say something.
And that's what your paintings are. That's you saying something.
I feel that if you want to take away all my rights, but I'm not going to. You can take all the way. You can live under the Indian Act and be one of those Indian Act Indians, but I'm not. I am a First Nations person on my traditional territory. This is my land. And nobody is going to stop me from saying anything. I will exercise my human right as a person. I don't need Greenpeace. I don't need David Suzuki. I can speak for myself. And I am. I am Brown Peace. And I look at the world as a noble savage, and I analyze the things that I see, and I deal with what I have to deal with. And when it comes to looking at forestry, fishing, mining, if you're a shareholder of BP or any other mining company, you get a free get out of jail card.
We've got a couple of minutes left. I want to ask you one last thing about this. The works of art that you do, I read a quote from you, something along the lines of, if people don't know me, they will fear me. But the art is designed to make you more known. If we understand each other, that fear won't be there. But I swear to God, people listening to you for the last half hour would go, well, I'm scared shitless of this guy because you sound like you're really angry. But you're not angry. Well, tell me about your anger.
I think I've managed it. I think that.
Yeah?
I think I have a fear of shareholders on the planet, of Bhopal or places like BP, nuclear companies. I think that mining companies, tail ends. There's a lot of law. This system has to change. Of course, they don't want to hear this. That if you're a shareholder and you pollute, you can't walk away anymore. You should be fined. Not just the company. You know, you make a system that is just designed for destruction of the world, and it carried on everywhere in the world. in gold mining everywhere. And I think that's a really dangerous way to have a system that is failing this world. This system is failing this planet. Global warming is on its way. It is going to happen. It's too late to say that, well, if we do this and this and this. No. You're not going to do this and this and this. No, nobody is listening on this planet. And prepare for it. Because it is man-made. And yes, everyone on this planet is responsible for it. And when they look at my paintings, I say, well, he painted this painting, red man watching white man trying to fix a big hole in the sky. Well, you can't blame me. You can't use my sorry brown ass because I made a painting proving the point that the world was responsible for this. And I think that's what that work is about, is I am here to entertain you. I'm here to enlighten you. I'm here to inform people that what it's like as a human experience under these systems. You don't have to go to the Amazon to find an indigenous person talking about his forest being cut down with some big army and billy clubs and that. I'm standing right here. We have the biggest clear cuts in the world right here in British Columbia. We need to change the name of British Columbia. This is First Nations land. I don't want land claims. I want to make a tax and share the resources. I'm not afraid of people using them to clean the things after. If you want to share this land, fine. But don't ask me to extinguish my rights in this country. I don't ask you to extinguish your rights. I say, no, you can't be white anymore. Why do you want to make me a non-Indian anymore? So it's really, that's really creepy. That's not a way to embrace Indians, Natives, First Nations. We're human beings. And I think that they deserve the respect of their treaties that exist. But they're an outdated system that we have to change with time.
Okay.
And I think how to look at it is I'm just looking at it in a different way. And I'm looking at it and I'm saying that this system it's never worked in the first place. So change it. You know, it is scary because it means that they'll have to free, that I will be emancipated, that all Indigenous people I can walk around just like Indira Gandhi. Is that too much to ask for?
I appreciate your time, Lawrence. It's been really good of you to do this. Thanks very much.
Okay.
Great.